It's MLS Week 6, and it's time to come up with this weekend's best MLS predictions, parlays, and best bets for the weekend, of which we have 13 games on Saturday and one on Sunday, a standalone game with Atlanta and Chicago. Now, when we're making MLS picks this weekend, it's important to consider that we do have the Champions Cup quarterfinals next week. That sees Columbus playing Tigres, New England playing Club America on Tuesday, Miami playing Monterrey on Wednesday, so some of those teams certainly could be looking ahead to those games. The other game, just to note, is Herediano and Pachuca. Obviously, those won't involve MLS teams. Teams coming off the bye this week include Dallas, Montreal, and Minnesota, who should be rested. Teams on the bye this week, just New England. That's probably good for them. They have Champions Cup coming up, and they've not been very good this season, so they could use the extra time off. Now, let's get into this week's picks. Be sure to like the video if you enjoy this info, and subscribe if you want more MLS picks all season long. This week I've made 3 different best bets: one parlay in plus money, one parlay at very short odds, and one single bet at the very end. Let's start off with parlay number 1, Philadelphia Union and Minnesota United. Philadelphia are 9th in the East. They're 1-3-0, still undefeated. Despite a roster missing a ton of players last week, they routed Portland 3-1. It was 3-0 until a late Portland goal. Still just 1 win in 4, and outside of one home 0-0 draw with Pachuca in the Champions Cup, they've conceded a goal in 7 of their other 8 games, where both team score bets have gone 6-2. Philadelphia at home is usually hard to bet against. They still have just 1 home loss in all competitions, though, in their last 27. Minnesota comes in first place in the West, also undefeated at 3-1-0, but they're not having trouble winning like Philly have, nor are they having trouble winning on the road, where they've already put 3 and 2 goals past Orlando and Austin this season. Both of those were wins. They've also scored in 10 straight MLS games and in 20 of 21. Last year, Minnesota won in PKs in the U.S. Open Cup, and there was a 3-3 draw. While they don't play often in different conferences, both teams to score is a perfect 6-0 if you go back all the way to 2017 in their short head-to-head history. I certainly see a goal coming from both teams in this game in what looks like a contender for one of the top games this weekend, I think. Let's go both teams to score to kick off this parlay. Next up, Inter Miami and New York City FC. Miami 3-1-2. They're second in the East. Last week, Miami were embarrassed, though, 4-0 versus the other New York team, the Red Bulls, though they were without the likes of Lionel Messi and Nicolas Ferreira due to hamstring injuries, and Drake Callender, Federico Redondo, and Diego Gomez, who were all away on international duty. Still, it led to head coach Tata Martino saying his team didn't even have the desire to compete in that game as they got embarrassed. That was the first time, though, Miami failed to score this season across 7 competitive games. They do have Champions Cup versus Monterrey Wednesday, so that is something to consider, but they'll surely want to get back into good form heading into that game. At home, they've only failed to score twice in their past 17 games. Cincinnati and Nashville, 2 of the better defensive teams. That's not what New York City FC is right now. They are 1-0-4. They're 14th in the East. They lost 1-0 to Cincinnati last week, so did keep that close. They have given up 7 goals across their 5 games, conceding in all 5 of those games. Going back to last season, they now have just 1 win in 21 road MLS games. They've conceded a goal in 19 of 21. Last year when these teams met up, it was 1-1 in Miami and 1-0 New York in New York. Home teams have gone 4-1-0 in the last 5 meetings. I don't want to take a Miami win because they have a game coming up and they don't have Messi. But in a parlay, Miami should certainly score. So let's go Miami to score. Austin and Dallas will round out this parlay. 2 struggling teams. They'll hope this rivalry sparks them to life in the early stages of this season. Dallas is 11th in the West, 1-0-3, 3 points. Austin 13th, 0-3-2, also with 3 points, both down there near the bottom. Austin lost 2-0 last week, and they had just 3 shots and just 1 shot on target. They still have just 1 win since last summer, all the way back on July 15th. Austin has allowed 2 goals in 4 of 5 games this season. There's been 2 or more goals in 4 of those 5, obviously, and 23 of their past 26 games as well have seen 2 or more goals. They're usually good, though, for a home goal, though, scoring in 14 straight games when playing at home at the Q2 Stadium. Dallas games average 3.3 goals per match. They're 4-0 to over 1.5 and over 2.5 totals, and perfect 4-0 to both teams to score bets and both teams to score in over 2.5 bets. Dallas should obviously be more rested here to prepare for this rivalry game, as they were on the bye last week. As bad as Austin has been, they did get Sebastian Driussi back 2 games ago. That could help them, should help them. And Dallas hasn't kept a clean sheet in 10 MLS games and has only 1 clean sheet in 17 overall games and only 1 in 14 of their past road games. In 3 meetings last year, Dallas won 1-0 on the road, Austin won 3-0 at home, and then Dallas won 1-0 at home. In 9 all-time meetings, a road team has only won twice. So some of those stats, given the 2 1-0 scores last season, might go against this pick here, but given how poor both defenses have been this year, I do see at least 2 goals in this game, maybe of both teams to score. Let's just go over 1.5, because this parlay will get us plus 140 odds with Austin, Dallas over 1.5, Miami to score, Philly, Minnesota, both teams to score. The next parlay is 3 more games, starting as we continue down into the later games of the day. On Saturday, RSL and St. Louis City. RSL are 5th in the West, 2-1-2, 7 points. St. Louis, 8th, 1-4-0, also with 7 points. Only the Galaxy, Chicago, and Miami games average more goals than the 3.6 that have been seen in St. Louis's games this season. If we look at their scores, 2-2, 3-3, 2-2, 2-0, and 2-1. So they've seen at least 2 goals in each of their games. That's a trend that goes back well into last season with 2 or more goals happening in 11 straight MLS games and also in 19 of 20 for St. Louis. RSL fell behind 1-0 in Vancouver last week, but they came back and won 2-1 behind 2 assists from Fidel Barash, 6th player in MLS history to record a multi-assist game as a 17-year-old. RSL have seen 2 or more goals in all of their games this season, score lines being 2-1, 2-1, 3-0, 1-1, and 2-0. But that's also happened in 19 of 21, going back to last season. 3 games last year between these teams. St. Louis, in St. Louis won 4-0 on the road. RSL won 3-1 on the road, and they drew their final match 1-1 in St. Louis. So also been at least 2 or more goals in all of their meetings. Easily, I think this could be another both teams to score game here. Unless they're playing LAFC or Colorado, RSL rarely keep clean sheets. They only have 4 in 18 games, and both of those came against those 2 teams. One versus LAFC in the snow this season, and the other 3 were last year. And Colorado, 2 of those being against Colorado, who was one of the worst teams and a team that rarely scored. And St. Louis has 12. St. Louis's last 12 on the road have seen both teams to score, hit in 9 of those last 12. So if you wanted to go both teams to score, that certainly would be a great bet, or just over 1.5 in a parlay. Vancouver versus Portland. Vancouver is 3rd in the West at 2-1-1, 7 points. Portland also sits on 7 points, 4th in the conference at 2-1-2. Vancouver lost 2-1 versus RSL, but they were without DP midfielder Andrew Cubas, who was with Paraguay. That stopped a 2-game win streak where they had scores of 3-1 and 2-0, but they've still scored in all 4 games, but have allowed a goal in 3 of those 4 games as well. The Caps may always be capable of scoring. They've done so in 16 of 19 competitive games going back to last season. They do only have 3 wins in their last 15. New DP Brian Rodriguez debuted and scored for Portland last week, but they lost 3-1, and his goal was very late in the game against a heavily depleted Philadelphia team, though Portland too were without goalkeeper Maxime Crépeau and defender Kamal Miller, who were away on international duty. They should be back this week. That gives Portland now back-to-back losses, but they have scored in 15 of 17 MLS games. There's been 2 or more goals in 16 of those 17, and both teams' score has gone 14-3 in that time. Last year, Vancouver won 1-0 at home, Portland won 3-1 at home, and Vancouver won the final meeting 3-2 in Portland. In the last 6 meetings, both teams' score has hit 5 times. Yet again, this is another game where I think there could be some goals. Certainly could be both teams to score, or at least over 1.5. And let's round this parlay out with the one Sunday game, and it's Atlanta and Chicago. Atlanta are 2-0-2. They have 6 points. Chicago 1-2-2, 5 points. Atlanta lost 2-0 in Toronto last week, but they were missing several key players. In their 2 home games this season, they won 2-0 and 4-1. Let's look at the 20 home games, MLS games for Atlanta going back to the start of last season. They're undefeated in 6. They're 13-4-3 going back to the start of last season, and they've scored in all 20 of those games and multiple goals in 14 of 20. Chicago games average the second most goals per match this season at 3.8. That's resulted in all of their games cashing both teams to score bets. They had a 1-1 score last week. Prior to that, 3-3, 2-1, 2-1, and 2-2. They have just 3 wins in 16 MLS games, though. Also just 3 wins in their last 18 road MLS games. Last year when they met up, it was 2-1 Atlanta in Atlanta, 3-3 in Chicago in the second meeting, and there's been 3 or more goals in 5 of the last 6 recent meetings. We could certainly see some goals here. Atlanta at home, though, always a good bet to possibly win, to maybe score twice, or simply to score in this parlay. I'm going to do a very short odds parlay here. RSL St. Louis over 1.5, Vancouver Portland over 1.5, and Atlanta to score at minus 161. Certainly, though, if you wanted to up that, you could either go Atlanta to win or maybe both teams to score in one or both of those other two games. Finally, this will be one just straight bet. The Galaxy and Seattle back on Saturday night. If you like excitement, the Galaxy are your team. If you like goals and betting on goals, the Galaxy are definitely your team. The Galaxy are second in the conference at 2-3-0. They're still undefeated. They look to be dead in the water, down 2-0 to SKC last week before scoring 3 goals in explosive fashion in 8 minutes from the 72nd to the 80th minute. Dejan Joveljic got the equalizer and has scored in all 5 games to start the year. That ties Brian McBride's record from 1998, and he is leading the league right now in XG. Galaxy games average the highest goals per match this season at 4.2, and they are 4-1 to both over 2.5 and even over 3.5 totals. Both teams to score has hit in all of their games at 5-0. Both teams to score in over 2.5. It's 4-1. In their last 14 games, both teams to score has gone a perfect 14-0, and the both teams to score plus over 2.5 is 13-1. And that's something I'd certainly want to keep backing and probably be a good bet this week. There's always goals between the Galaxy and Seattle. Last year, Seattle won 2-1 in LA in MLS. LA won 3-1 in LA in the US Open Cup, and Seattle won 2-1 in Seattle back in MLS play. If you go further back between these teams, both teams to score in over 2.5 is 5-0 and 6-1, and just both teams to score is a perfect 7-0. Both teams to score is also 11-1 in the past 12 meetings between these teams. The home teams also not failed to score in any of the past 15 meetings between them as well. But then when we look at Seattle, they are bottom of the West right now, not a place you're used to seeing them. And they only finally scored from open play last week, and they both had previously, and that was to previously winless San Jose. They're 0-2-2. They have just 2 points. That's only better than New England in the East with 1 point. Not what we would have expected from Seattle, although they're already missing the likes of many other players. Now they have like João Paulo and Pedro de la Vega, a key offseason signing, and now they've lost Leo Chu, who's gone down with an injury as well. In Seattle's 2 home games this season, they did hold Austin to 0 and Colorado to 1 goal. But those are some of the weaker teams in the league. In their 2 road games, they've allowed 2 to LAFC and 3 to San Jose. Now, obviously, that's 1 good team and 1 not so good team right there. I think if San Jose can score 3 against Seattle, LA, probably the most explosive offense right now, they certainly can get at least 2. They've done that in 4 straight games. So let's make this a single bet. Just the Galaxy over 1.5 team goals coming in at minus 115 odds over at Caesars. So there are your 2 MLS parlays and 1 single bet for this week's MLS predictions. How do you see these games unfolding? Drop your picks in the comments. You can see a summary of the picks at the end of the video. Check out the website, shredthespread.com, and the Instagram account for more sports betting content as well. Let's all hope to make some money in our MLS picks this weekend. Good luck.